Namaskar, Nilesh Oak here. My greetings to all of you on the auspicious day of Vijayadashami, also known as Dasara or Dashara. Every Vijayadashami time I get this question. So this time I thought I will proactively respond to it. The question I'm going to mention is but an illustration. Similar questions are also asked as they relate to other events of our civilization, the historical events of Hindu civilization. Broadly, I'm calling this particular episode as Parampara versus Itihasa. A typical question I get is, when did Bhagwan Ram kill Ravana? The reason many ask this question is because they have read my book, The Historic Ram, which I published about 10 years ago. And the date I mentioned there does not agree with the day of Vijayadashami, which is per Indian calendar is Ashwin Shukla Paksha and the Dashami Tithi. Now, this occurs because of partly our confusion between Parampara versus Itihasa. Parampara in the sense of tradition, convention, how we celebrate these events, how we celebrate these festivals, how we celebrate these memories, versus Itihasa, Itihasa in the sense of when exactly they happen. There can be a gap between how we celebrate or when we celebrate a certain historical event in a social context versus actually when it occurred. For example, the Vijayadashami, which is a 10-day celebration of Navaratri that ends with Vijayadashami. This day of Vijayadashami is celebrated for different reasons, including the Navaratri itself. This particular episode, I have called it as a Parampara versus Itihasa. So let's look at some of the facets of this distinction. Let's begin with a well-known celebration of Durga Puja, the Devi celebration with her different forms through the 9 days of that Navaratri. And then that culminates in the Visarjan of Durga Murti in the river, in the lake, some water body. Now, what is the origin of it? You may find origin of it, again, many different stories from the tradition and from convention. But one of them, of course, is Durga killing Mahishasura. So that's what gets celebrated on the day of Vijayadashami. Now, from a Itihasic point of view, we do not have sufficient evidence, sufficient detailed descriptions to date this event, assuming it is a historical event, that Durga killing Mahishasura. Or it could be symbolic, or it could be historical. In either case, we don't have the specific information to determine its antiquity. Antiquity in terms of if it was a historical event, when exactly the event took place, or if it is a celebration by tradition, by convention, when exactly it began. We don't have a sufficient information. At least I did not have, or I don't have sufficient information. So it remains a tradition. Now let's look at another convention, another parampara, as it relates to the celebration of Vijayadashami. As it relates to Mahabharata, but I'm saying only in the sense of convention and tradition, the way it is celebrated. The timing of Vijayadashami and that Navaratri, especially the end of Navaratri, is considered the timing when Pandava brothers were in Ajnatwas at the court of King Virat. And somebody, I'm just avoiding the names to avoid the information overload, deliberately attacked the kingdom of Virat, the Matsya Desh, and attacked the cows, okay, tried to take them away. And therefore, out of 5 Pandava brothers, except Arjun, all others in a way participated into this war. Now, for the details, I will encourage you to read the Mahabharata text. But the relevant portion is when that was happening, Kaurava attacked Matsyadesh from the other side, knowing well that there are not many warriors and army to defend Matsyadesh. But to their surprise, Arjun was still there as a Bruhannada or Bruhannala. Both are correct, by the way. Okay, the some forms change. The L can become D and Ng and so on and so forth. Long story short, the Rajputra Uttar and Arjun, they single-handedly go and defeat the Kaurava army. At this time, Arjun says that these specific weapons are required. He takes the Prince Uttar to a Shami tree and removes the weapons, including Gandiva bow. Now, what is a Shami tree? You can see a variety of this, so that's not the argument I want to get into. In fact, in Maharashtra, on this day, they will use this Shami tree. There is another story associated with it, how the gold fell on the Shami tree and so on. I'll not go there. So this day, the Shami leaf are used as a proxy for exchanging gold, and everyone exchanges these Shami leaves, or in Marathi they call her apta. Okay, apta says hard. The tree, apta tree, and the apta leaves. Okay, aptechi pani. And what is the significance of this? Besides that proxy for gold, that Pandava brothers had kept their weapons secured into this tree for a year when they were in Ajnatavas. And so, per tradition, per convention, Arjun removed these weapons from the Shami tree on the day of Vijayadashami. Now, keep in mind, this is the Parampara, this is the convention. Against that, if you look at the Itihasa descriptions from the Mahabharata text itself, actually it will tell you that it was the day of either Dashami or close to Dashami. However, it was not the Shukla Paksha as we celebrate our Vijayadashami, but in fact, it was the Krishna Paksha, something else. While we celebrate Vijayadashami in the lunar month of Ashwin, at the time of Mahabharat war, Mahabharat rather, when Arjun removed the weapons from the Shami tree, it was the lunar month of Jyeshtha, or possibly Ashad. From the season perspective, while we celebrate Vijayadashami towards the end of Sharad season, at the time of Mahabharat, when Arjun removed these weapons from a Shami tree, it was the first half of Vasanta season. In fact, we can almost nail down the date. Okay, so 15 April 5561 BCE was that day of Saptami, and 2-3 days after, Arjun removed the weapons from the Shami tree. So I'm just giving you a difference of Parampara versus Itihasa. Now, what is interesting is that these remote references, for example, here we see the reference to Susharmat Krishna Pakshasya Saptamim, and then the Ashtamya. These are the days when there was a fight going on. And just immediately after this, after Saptami, Ashtami or so, Kauravas attacked the Matsya kingdom, and which is when Arjun fought with the Kaurava army with Prince Uttar, Okay, and that's the timing. So possibly around 2-3 days after this 15th of April. But what remains is very interesting into the commentaries of previous Mahabharata researchers. Most of these commentaries are in Sanskrit, but we also get their comments in the form of what time was this particular, what time in the sense of what was the time as per the lunar calendar, Indian lunar calendar, Indian lunisolar calendar. And one commentator here, I will highlight it. It says Ashada Masa Krishna, or he says could be Shukla Saptamyam. Now, why he is saying Shukla there possibly? Because this particular commentator is aware of the Vijayadashami celebration. And Vijayadashami celebration, we do it in Shukla Paksha. So he's saying, hey, could be Shukla, but based on the Mahabharata reference itself, it is saying the Krishna Paksha. Therefore, he's saying Krishna Paksha. But he's designating the month. This is very interesting because now that takes us 6 months before the Mahabharata war. And Mahabharata war, we have sufficient evidence to tell us that it happened during the month of Margashirsha, and it was the first half of Sharat season. So you go back 6 months, that's the first half of Vasanta season. Again, remember, immediately after this event, Princess Uttara was wedded to Abhimanyu. And what is the context of this? Well, Abhimanyu fell in the battle on the 13th day of the war. That was on 28th of October, 5561 BCE. And when Uttara hears that news, and when she's lamenting, she refers to they being married for 6 months. Okay, so that's also very consistent with this Mahabharata reference. So just to summarize there, why we celebrate Vijayadashami also in the sense of Arjuna removing the weapons from a Shami tree. And that's perfectly fine. As a memory, that's a great thing to do. In reality, from an Itihasa perspective, actually, it was during the month of Jyeshtha, somewhere there, and not during the month of Ashwin. It was, the Tithi appears to be closer, so it could be the Tithi of a Dashami, but not of a Shukla Paksha as we celebrate in our times as a Vijayadashami, but it was rather Krishna Paksha. And it was the first half of Vasanta season and not the end of Sharad season as we celebrate in our times, about 7,500 years after. Okay, let's go to the next one. The question that we began with. When did Bhagwan Ram kill Ravana? This same Vijayadashami day, which we are celebrating today, 24th October 2023, on the day of Ashwin Shukla Dashami, not Ashwini, Ashwin Shukla Dashami, Vijayadashami day, and this is the end of Sharad season. Again, as a convention and as a tradition, it's perfect to celebrate these wonderful memories of our antiquity. However, from an Itihasa perspective, it's also important to recognize the difference. What does Valmiki Ramayana tells us about the timing when Bhagwan Ram killed Ravana? It gives beautiful descriptions. These descriptions allow us to nail down the specific timing. It was the day of Amavasya and it was the end of the lunar month of Chaitra. Also, it was the end of Sharat season. So in that sense, we do match, okay? In the sense of end of Sharat season, we do match. In case of Mahabharata, Arjuna removing the weapons from a Shami tree, we do match the Tithi, Dashami, but not the Paksha and not the lunar month. In this case, we match the end of Sharat season in the sense of season, but we do not match the Tithi and we do not match the lunar month. because now we are celebrating in the month of Ashwin. Exactly opposite. In fact, look at this. When Bhagwan Ram killed Ravan, the sun was near Nakshatra Ashwini, which means the full moon position would be 180-degree opposite, and that happens to be the end of lunar month of Chaitra. The day was 6th January 12,208 BCE per the Julian calendar extended into antiquity. Many people also ask this question, why do we use a Julian calendar? Because that is the only existing trackable, purely solar calendar. Now we can use a Gregorian one, but by convention for anything before, say, 15th century, by convention, people use Julian calendar. Otherwise, we will not able to state the date. And it will be very difficult for people to exactly figure out when somebody says, Bhagwan Ram killed Ravan on Amavasya day, end of Chaitra, about 14,000 years ago. Therefore, we have to use this calendar. What are some of the beautiful references? It talks about the position of Mercury near Rohini. Prajapatyam cha nakshatram Rohinim Shashina Priyam Samakramya, Sama Akramya, okay, in a very, very near, close, okay, Buddhas Tathav Prajanam Shubhava. It also refers to, in an indirect fashion, of course, that, every time we have a Amavasya, we don't have a solar eclipse, and every time we have a full moon day, Purnima, we don't have a lunar eclipse. But essentially, it creates a plausible situation like that. So Bhagwan Valmiki is using that beautifully, that metaphorically, and saying, Ramachandramasan drishtva grastan Ravana Rahuna, as if, like, Ram encroached, covered, Ravana, just like the Rahu covers the sun. Okay, so Ramachandra, that, here, Ramachandra, moon, okay, covering the sun. What a beautiful metaphor, what a beautiful analogy there. Okay, Ramachandramasan drishtva grastan Ravana Ravana. And we can nail down exact day based on 500, close to 600 specific astronomy descriptions from Valmiki Ramayana. Now, as soon as I say this, I always get the next question. So yes, now we understand that Bhagwan Ram killed Ravan not on the day of Vijayadashami, historically speaking. Okay, Itihasa, but it was Amavasya, end of Chaitra, end of Sharad season, 6 January 12,208 BCE. We get it. But then it gets into another confusion. Okay, so then is it correct that Bhagwan Ram took 20 days from the Dashami day to the end of the month of Ashwin to the Amavasya day to arrive at Ayodhya? No, that is not correct. In fact, after Bhagwan Ram killed Ravan on 6 January 12,208 BCE, he stayed there just on the outskirts of Lanka for the next couple of days. And he expresses his eagerness to return to Ayodhya with Vibhishan, when Vibhishan is performing the final rites of Mahabali Ravan. And Vibhishan assures Bhagwan Ram that Bhagwan Ram need not worry. Vibhishan has access to Pushpak Viman and it's capable of taking Bhagwan Ram from Lanka, which was right at the equator, all the way to Ayodhya within a day's time, like our modern jet. And so after 2-3 days, Bhagwan Ram, along with Sugriva, Hanuman, key Vanara army, Vanara leaders, leaves for Ayodhya. Keep in mind, it was not a non-stop flight from Lanka, right from the equator to Ayodhya, but in fact, they took one stop on the way, okay, at Kishkinda. That is where key Vanara ladies also joined the crew. And then they flew again and came to the ashram of Bharadwaj. Now, when did they come to the ashram of Bharadwaj? Before we go there, keep in mind that today, I mean today meaning 20 days from today, at the time of Diwali, Lakshmi Pujan, again, Diwali is celebrated in many different ways, such as Lakshmi Pujan. and many other events. But also one of the convention, okay, the parampara point of view or a tradition is to think of this as Bhagwan Rama's arrival in Ayodhya. And so Ayodhya, here at the bottom picture, there is a big celebration that is done every year. But you can see the Diwali celebrations all around India and around the world, including if you, for example, you see in Amritsar, this is the Golden Temple, there is that Diwali celebration going on. And so therefore, because of this parampara, the conventional celebration, people also confuse. And they say, well, Nileshji, why are you saying that Bhagwan Ram arrived in Ayodhya after killing Ravana sometime during the month of Vaishakha, whereas we celebrate this at the end of lunar month of Ashwin? For the exactly same reason that we are discussing here, parampara versus itihasa. So what does itihas tells us? Itihas tells us that Bhagwan Ram arrived at the ashram of Bharadwaj along with Vibhishan, along with Sugriv, Hanuman, Vanara ladies on the Panchami day after completing 14 years of Vanvas. That's what Yuddha Kanda tells us. Purne Chaturdashe Varshe Panchamyam Lakshmana Graja. Okay. Bharadwajashramam Prapya Vavande Niyato Munim. So after completing 14 years on the Panchami Tithi, along with these various individuals I mentioned, the Vanara leaders, also Vibhishan, they arrived, Lakshmanagraja, which means Bhagwan Ram, arrived at the ashram of Bharadwaj Muni. And again, when was that? Panchami, Madhya, Rajani, Mushitva, Vachanan, Muni. Okay, that's when the discussion is happening. They arrived on the day of Panchami. Now, what gives us the clue? Like every month we get two Panchamis, okay? One of a Shukla Paksha, one of a Krishna Paksha, and so on. Of course, there are 600 plus astronomy clues that is there, but what specifically gives us the clue that tells us that it was the Vaishakha, lunar month of Vaishakha, okay? The additional clues that tells us that it cannot be Kartik, okay? I'm not going to the detail. I will encourage all of you to read my book, The Historic Ram. But there is something else. Bhagwan Ram sends Hanuman in advance to meet with Bharat, who is staying outside Ayodhya at Nandigram and taking care of the kingdom from there. And during the discussion, Hanuman mentions to Bharat that Bhagwan Ram will meet you the next day, that is on a Shashti. Therefore, after Panchami comes Shashti, on Nakshatra Pushya. Avignam Pushya Yogena Shvo Ramam Drashtumarhasi. Now, when you triangulate this, using the common sense, of course, the Viveka Buddhi, Indian lunisolar calendar, scientific triangulation of explanation, prediction, testing, and of course 600 plus astronomy evidence, astronomy descriptions from Valmiki Ramayana. It tells you that the day Bhagwan Ram arrived in Ayodhya after completing 14 years of Vanvas was the day of Vaishakha Shukla Shashti. Nakshatra was Pushya. It was also the end of Sharad season. So in that sense, directionally speaking, we celebrate Diwali around the end of Sharad season. So yes, the Sharad season, the end of Sharad season is matched. However, not the specific tithi of Shukla Shashti, not the nakshatra, and not the lunar month. Because when Bhagwan Ram arrived in Ayodhya, it was the lunar month of Vaishakha, the end of Sharad season. In our times, when we celebrate it, it is the end of Sharad season, but it is the lunar month of Ashwin. Hope this helps. Now, if you want to read more about the specific Itihasa descriptions, you can read my 3 books. Now, as soon as that happens, there is another confusion of the Yuga, the durations of Yuga, and when did the Kali Yuga began. So I would encourage you to read Yuganta by Jivan Rao. They are available in India through Subbu Publications, of course, around the world too. But you may find sometime more efficient, especially if you're outside India, to buy through Amazon. The cover pages may look different. The historic Ram is same as 12,209 BCE. And you can also, by the way, get Yuganta by Jivan Rao through Amazon as well, especially if you are outside India. And some of my books have already been translated into other languages, such as When Did the Mahabharat War Happen? Already exist in Kannada. The historic Rama exists as Itihasik Ram in Marathi, and the historic Ram abridged version also exists in Hindi. Thank you very much. I'll see you in another episode very soon. Namaskar.